And I think yes, because when I went home, I watched the video. You guys must tell me, like the other iPad was in the field of view. And I didn't notice it when I was here. So you must tell me if I'm writing, I was writing up here and it was in the light. And you must tell me things like that, because sometimes I just don't realize. All right, guys, so let's get started for today. I just want to show you quickly what I've done this morning and last night on Google Classroom. So I've called this folder Revision Sessions and Resources. So at the bottom is yesterday's session, and if you go in there, you're going to find a very long hour video and a half an hour. And once I get the links from Mr. Ruzmeza to squish it down and put it into our YouTube channel, then it will be less to upload for you guys. And then this is what we're doing today, grade 12 revision 2, we'll go in there now. Then I've put some human reproduction resources, so I'm hoping that we can get to that. Otherwise, I'm going to make a Zoom video from home, which I'll upload about, revision of that. And then I've got here DNA genetics, but we did DNA genetics the other day by going over the test. But I'll still make a Zoom video on that, and I'll still make a Zoom video using my summaries on evolution. So they're similar to what I gave you yesterday. It's lots of terms. And just by going through the terms, we pick up on nearly everything that we need to understand. All right, so let me show you what I put in, because I think this is what people are going to be struggling with. Evolution I can easily do at home. I think that's easier. Okay, so I've said here, I've got a reproduction. If you can't see, you can just open Google Classroom. There's reproduction, plants, animals. So flower reproduction and reproductive strategies. Are we happy to do that today?
That's perfect, thank you, ma'am.
Because everyone struggles with flowers, that's the problem, okay? And then there are little videos here that I'm not going to show. You can go and watch them at home. It's the ones that I normally show in class. I think there's 3 videos. And I hope I've got the other thing here. And then I was thinking the other thing to go over today, is the endocrine system. So are we happy to do plant, animal reproduction, and endocrine?
That's perfect.
And then maybe human if I get there. Otherwise, I will make a Zoom video on evolution, human reproduction, and genetics and DNA at home. Okay, so let me open this quickly. So this is a new one. I didn't have this last year because last year we only did reproduction when we came back in the 3rd term. So please go and have a look there, and you can see I put quite a bit of information. I don't know if you can see it on the screen here. Can you see from home on the screen? Or is it very blurred?
It's quite blurred.
Okay, can you open it up? Can you open it up on Google Classroom? On another device? But it just guides me as well, so that I don't forget things, and then I'll just draw on the board like I did yesterday. Okay? Because there's no pictures here, but it guides, the discussion. Okay, so what I've done, so I actually I made this up last night. So I've started off with, is that right? Yes, oh yes. I thought I started with plants. No, I didn't. So I started off with reproduction in animals, and all those funny words like oviparous or whatever. But I've put some extra notes here. So I was going through the textbook and looking at key things that I think that you need to, remember. All right, and I did the same for plants, and I'll go mad over here, and I'll draw and do the whole plant reproduction thing as well. Okay, so I've said here it's page 52 to 61 in your textbooks. There's nice explanations there, there's nice examples, but that's for the animal part. That's like the introduction to it's vertebrate reproduction, or animal reproduction, and it's an introduction to human reproduction. All right, so that's in our textbook, but if you remember the reproduction in plants, so asexual and sexual reproduction in plants, like flowers, that was a set of printed notes that was given to you, and if you've misplaced them, you will find them on Moodle. Okay, so I started off here by saying, right, we're doing reproduction in animals. I really feel like I'm talking to myself. Okay, all right, it's quite odd to get into the zone. Okay, so I started off by saying, because they're always going to ask you, well, not always, this is what comes up. Why, what's the difference between asexual, where's my stick? Hang on. Okay. So what's the difference between asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction? They're always going to ask somewhere, maybe, I don't know. Depends, you must look at past papers as well. in animals, and then how does it differ in plants? Okay, so in animal reproduction, it's usually unicellular organisms like bacteria, amoeba, little paramecia, the little long sort of oval organisms with little cilia, and they live in pond water. Okay, so yes, we know about mitosis, and that's how they reproduce, and we call it binary fission, and they can reproduce bacteria every 20 or 30 minutes, if the conditions are good. So asexual reproduction occurs when conditions are favorable, like amoeba in a pond. You've even got amoeba, different species in your gut. So if conditions are favorable, they will happily divide by mitosis to produce more of them. But if it starts getting very cold in the pond, then they're going to revert to sexual reproduction. But we don't really do that. That's kind of when they slow down, you know, draw in, and then they develop a protective spore coat around them, and they just happily stay dormant in winter. And then spring comes, and there they go off again, and then they start dividing. So we don't really do that part. All right, so asexual reproduction, when conditions are favorable, it's very rapid, no partners are needed. Essentially, they're forming clones of each other because there's DNA replication, and then they divide by mitosis, and you end up with clones. As I'm going through this, I'm just seeing all these links to every single section we've done. So cloning, you know, and the population increases rapidly in size. All right, then sexual reproduction in animals. All right, so this is when we need gametes. So haploid cells, meiosis, okay. I've said here egg cells or ova, or you can say one ovum, is fertilized by, or egg cells are fertilized by sperm cells. They're also called spermatozoa, and they join to form a single diploid cell called a zygote, okay. And that can happen in asexual organisms as well. They can sexually reproduce, but we don't really do that, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, even fungi, your bread mold at home on your bread, they actually, these filaments, they get close and they grow together, and then they make a zygote. But it's quite a complicated process, not in our syllabus. But what we're leading on to is reproduction in vertebrates. But reproduction also takes, you know, sexual reproduction in like grasshoppers mating. I'm sure you've all seen that, or flies mating. Okay, so there is, and generally, no. Let me not go there yet, so I'm going to go off on a tangent like yesterday. Okay, so now you get, different kinds of fertilization. So you either get, for organisms that reproduce sexually, there's either external or internal fertilization. So external fertilization, that's in water bodies, fish and frogs and salamanders and newts, all right, where the female deposits her egg cells because she's stimulated to. The frogs don't mate, he grips her, and that gripping her stimulates her to release her eggs, and then he deposits his sperm over the eggs. So it's a very low success rate because they have to produce lots of eggs and lots of sperm and get as close to each other as possible. And you know, a lot of them don't get fertilized, or they get eaten. And I normally show a video where, I'll get to that now, because that's actually, no, I can do it now. Fish. A salmon fish, when they swim upstream and the females deposit the eggs and the males swim over with the sperm, and as they're doing that, these predator fish are, you know, swimming by and just chomping up all those eggs. Okay, so it's a lot of wastage. A lot of them are not fertilized, they're eaten, and they're only, you know, they're in water, so the eggs are only surrounded by a little jelly layer. All right, so they don't have to really worry about dehydration. But then, and I've just remembered, I was going to put a little video onto Google Classroom, because I put quite a few there already, but there's one where they talk about the development of the amniotic egg. So the minute organisms move onto land, then they need internal fertilization, and then the eggs are laid. So they explain that by saying, well, they're now on land, there's a big chance of dehydration, so that egg, that chicken's egg or crocodile's egg, it's like a little pond. The pond now is inside the egg. With fish and frogs, it was in the water. They didn't have to worry about the eggs, and except for predation, they didn't dry out. But the minute organisms move onto land, they use internal fertilization, you know, reptiles, birds, and mammals. There's copulation, mating. So the semen is deposited into the female's body. The sperm are in that semen, and it's all about escaping the dryness of the environment. So the little pond, the watery, think of the amniotic fluid, think of the fluid, the watery stuff inside a chicken's egg. The pond is there now, and that's hydrating. And there's also yolk in all of these, fish, frogs, birds, mammals, reptiles. There's always a bit of yolk, even us. And that yolk supplies nourishment. But in us, that little yolk sac is only, I can't remember how long, but it supplies nourishment for the very early embryo until the embryo implants in the uterus wall. Okay? So, internal fertilization is about creating that safe space for the egg to develop. If they lay the egg, all right, on land like a crock, they don't have to make as many eggs. It's less wasteful. And there's, less wasteful, fewer eggs produced, and there's obviously a higher chance of fertilization because there is mating. Okay, so now there's even differences in that, because some animals on land don't lay eggs, or, like us, we give birth to live young, or they lay eggs with shells, or the eggs with shells stay inside the body, and then they hatch inside, and that's why it looks like they're giving birth to live young. Am I going too quick? Everyone happy?
I'm good, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so the next little part, I've reminded you about those words. And it's really, if you want to go read in the textbook, it's really nicely explained. Okay, so I put oviparous first. So ovi, like ovum or ova, egg, parous means to part. So when you give birth, it's called parturition. So we just say give birth, parturition. So oviparous means that they're parting from the egg. So it's a shelled egg that is laid on land, all right? So it refers to animals which lay eggs before or after they are fertilized. So whether you are a fish, a female fish that lays eggs in the water and then the male swims over and deposits his sperm, or if you are a chicken, and the egg, the mating occurs, and the egg is developed with the shell and all the membranes and the albumin and the yolk develops inside the body, and then it's laid, you are oviparous. All right, but they've just got that protective shell and membranes to prevent drying out of the eggs on land. All right, so fish and amphibians lay eggs in water, reptiles, birds, and even the duck-billed platypus, that really odd mammal, lays eggs. It's almost like it's like that missing link, hey? That intermediate organism that hasn't changed over thousands of years, and it's an intermediate between egg laying and mammals. All right, so oviparous. So either they're covered in jelly like fish or frogs. It should be frogs. I haven't checked the spelling on this. I was just still busy with it this morning, putting some things in. Okay, so it's covered in jelly like fish or frogs, or shells like reptiles and birds, and even the duck-billed platypus, and there is yolk. But in, what I should have, oh yeah, that's right. Sorry, I thought I missed something out. Okay, then viviparous. Parous, once again, parting. Vivisection means live. Vivisection means, cut, dealing with a live organism. So parting, live. They're born alive. All right, so mainly in mammals, and that's where there is no egg shell, but they are the membranes, the amnion and the chorion, the amniotic fluid, the placenta, and the umbilical cord. And initially there is that little yolk sac to provide for nutrition until the embryo has implanted properly. Right, then you get ovoviviparous. It's actually a lovely video on this that I don't know if I uploaded them when Mrs. Page was busy, because I know she had some of her own. I must check. In fact, I have uploaded quite a few already onto the one revision thing this morning. Okay, so ovoviviparous, the fertilized eggs remain inside the body. They hatch inside. They've got a shell, and the young emerge. It looks like they're giving birth to live young. So some sharks, it looks like, dolphins give birth to live young because they're mammals, but some sharks, it looks like they give birth to live young. But in fact, those eggs are hatching inside. And sharks are pretty mean, okay? So sometimes they have a couple of eggs inside, these shelled eggs, and then there's the one that's stronger actually eats the other ones. He uses them as food. It's like the cuckoo, the cuckoo bird. It's a parasitic bird. The mother lays the egg in a little tiny bird's nest, and then the cuckoo kicks out all the young ones, and only it survives. Sharks do that as well. Okay, the dominant shark will eat its siblings, and then it looks like the mother's giving birth to a live shark. All right, chameleons as well. It looks like they're giving live birth. And recently I saw a little video. Yeah, it was chameleons. I think there's some lizards as well. But these tiny baby chameleons in a little drop of fluid came out. Now reptiles and fish and frogs, they've got one opening. They don't have a vagina and an anus and whatever. They've got one opening where all the waste comes out, and intercourse and eggs. You know, if they lay eggs, or live birth. Okay, so yeah, that chameleon was giving birth to these tiny little babies in a drop of fluid. It was really quite amazing because I've never seen it before. All right, so that's ovoviviparous. So it's some lizards, snakes, even also ovoviviparous, sharks, and certain fish. Sorry. Okay, so there is a yolk to provide nourishment as well, but they're staying inside. It's almost like more parental care. There's less chance of the eggs now being preyed on because they're not laid on the ground. You know, they're not left there for predators, although there is parental care by the parents. They are kept inside for longer, and then they hatch and it looks like live birth. All right, so this whole story about the amniotic egg, that one little video, it's so cute. It's animated with these funny little animals. So it's all about them moving onto land, shell and membranes to prevent dehydration, but that shell still allows for diffusion of gases. Now, when you look at your textbook, if you do look at your textbook, and I mean, you've got all those videos from Mrs. Page as well with, you know, good explanations, and then I've got my videos that I use in PowerPoints. Mine don't have all the explanations because that's what she did for lockdown. So you can look at either her videos explaining or more picture ones, which are mine on Moodle. It's up to you, okay? All right, so what was I going to, what am I explaining here now? Forgotten. Oh, so when I was looking at the textbook this morning, there's a lot of detail about the amniotic egg, the chicken's egg, and detail and what it looks like and all the different parts. Please don't learn that. What I've said here is enough, okay? All right, but now there's this idea of parental care. So we generally, you know, we think that fish and frogs don't have parental care, but there is some parental care. Did I give you a question about the little frogs that lay their eggs in little leaves that they stick together with mucus, and then the little tadpoles hatch in that little pond in the leaves, and then they drop out? So there's some parental care there, where the parents lay the eggs, instead of in a big pond where they get eaten, they actually produce this little cradle with sticking leaves together and water that rains in, and then the little tadpoles develop there, and then they plop out. So there's either lots of parental care, or there's, you know, all the way down to no parental care. Like salmon, when once the male has deposited his sperm, they're gone. The salmon actually die. All right? So you've got to read whatever scenario gets given to you in prelims or in the final. So how much parental care? Are they oviparous? Is it internal fertilization? Is it external fertilization? You've got to remember all these terms and see what they are asking. It's more like a case study. All right, so I see I left out one thing here. So, you know, there's also sometimes there's courtship behavior. There's even certain fish, little stickleback fish, and the little males get a red belly, and then they zigzag dance, and they build a nest out of twigs, like a little tunnel on the bottom of the pond. And if the females like their dance and their belly, their red chest, and they like the nest, then the females will swim through, deposit the eggs, and then the males swim through, deposit the sperm. So it's all about increasing chance of fertilization, and he actually guards that little nest. All right, so that's odd for a fish to have parental care, and the female goes off. So often in animal kingdom, it's the male that's doing the parental care. Like I'm trying to think of others now. Okay, so the fish was the one example. Seahorses. The male keeps the eggs in his little pouch. He's not pregnant. All right, they hatch there, and then it looks like he's giving birth. No, he's not. Okay, they were just in his pouch. They hatched, and then they go back in. Okay, they go back for protection. All right, so these two words at the bottom here, they are in the textbook, but you don't need to know the word altricial or precocial. But I think beware of how different the parental care is. So I've been trying to remember, you know, how can you remember this? Although you don't need to know the word. You know, maybe they put it in, but with an explanation, okay? So altricial, they need all the help they can get. All the help. altricial. So like little baby birds that are born and sometimes they fall on the ground and then they die. And if we don't put them back in the nest, they die. They can't fly. They can't feed themselves. So they have those big gaping mouths. All right, they can't hatch by themselves. They need lots of parental care. Kangaroos as well, the little joeys. They're born so early, like tiny, and pandas, that they stay in the pouch and they suckle off milk. So they're mammals, but they need all the help they can get from their mothers. All right, so altricial, they need all the help. They're born helpless, lots of parental care. They need food, water, warmth, and protection. All right, there's lots of examples in the animal kingdom. Okay, then you get precocial. Did I switch on? Oh, it is working. I thought the video wasn't working. Then you get precocial. They're pre-ready. Okay, I call it drop and run. All right? So these poor little guys, they're born with lots of independence. You can see I've written drop and run. Please don't write that in your exam. Okay? They're pre-formed, like a zebra. It gets born, plops on the ground, and I've seen giraffes being born, and they fall from such a height, and then, and then in a few minutes, they can actually run off and start suckling from the mother. All right? Ducks as well. Ducks, the little chicks hatch, and they're already running after mom. But if you think of birds like in the nests in the trees around here, little mossies and doves, they are so helpless with that big gaping mouth. Okay, so these guys, they can run, walk, swim, and find food straight away. They're pre-ready. Okay, guys, we happy?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything else that you need around this little section about animal reproductive strategies? Are we happy? Nothing else you want me to go through?
I'm happy, Mom.
Okay, so it's figuring out what type of fertilization. Do they lay their eggs on land or in water? Are they protected by a shell? Are they kept inside and hatch inside, or are they laid and then hatch? Or is it live birth like us? How much parental care is there? Is there courtship? Okay, so you'll probably get something like a nice case study or a paragraph, and then you get asked questions about that. All right. I was thinking of crocodiles. Crocodiles have some parental care, even though they're so primitive. They dig that hole, and even turtles less. And then they lay their eggs in the sand, and then they cover it up and they go away. And then sometimes other animals come and dig them out. But when the babies are hatched and they crawl through the sand, and then they go beep, beep, have you heard of that? They call their mothers, and then the mothers come along, and they used to think that they were eating the babies. They were picking the babies up in their mouths and then taking them to the water. And there's often a nursery where other female crocodiles will help look after the young of all of them. And it's quite amazing because they're very primitive animals. Their brain is small, and it's almost instinct. That's all it is. It's just instinct. Okay, so, and also turtles come up onto the beach, lay the eggs, and then they cover them, and then a lot of them get eaten or dug up, or people dig them up, and then the ones that survive, they now go back into the water, and a lot of them get preyed on. So there's lots of eggs laid, but there's a lot of predation, and many of them don't reach adulthood. So you can go back to that graph of yesterday, and I think this is where in the past paper they had to draw one of those graphs, or choose the graph, or draw it. I think it was draw it, where you've got to choose that survivorship curve, where the percent number that are surviving. So if it was an elephant, because they have long gestation, pregnancy, and lots of parental care, there's a higher chance that they're going to survive to adulthood. But if you are a fish laying eggs in water, you lay so many eggs that the percent surviving, a couple of days or weeks later is very, very low. And very few crocs or turtles or fish actually make it to adulthood. They've got low survivorship because of, you've got to look at how much parental care, where were the eggs laid. Can you see how it all ties in? It's actually quite nice. All right. Then, what did I want to say here? I was thinking of something else. Yeah, it's gone. Okay, so that's the animal reproductive strategies. There's a lovely little summary I've just written here. There's a little mind map summary on page 61. There's also questions, but some of those questions are too much about the structure of the chicken's egg, okay, which you don't need to know. All right? Then, and please, when you're studying, have your SAGs next to you. and tick off, I've done this, I've done that, I've revised that, I've read that. Please do that. All right, and I do that when I'm setting your prelim as well. Okay, so then we get on to reproduction in plants. And I think, who finds this the hairy section, the difficult section? Reproduction in plants, ovary, ovule. Does anyone find it difficult? Sorry?
Just a reminder to end like your video half an hour.
Okay.
You know how you said you wanted.
Yeah, it's going to be what's the time? 5 more minutes. Oh yeah, let's stop it now. Then we'll do plant reproduction in another one. Good idea.
Yeah.